Hey guys, it's Arenthio here again. This will be a guide on this game called Northwind that I've been playing for a while, right, on Roblox. And, I've played it for about a year at this point, and I would say I'm proficient in most aspects of the game, so I'm going to try to explain the most important things you would have to know as a new player, or even a returning player, since gone are the days of crafting everything with pine and iron. So again, this will mostly be a crafting guide. PvP is important, but I also think it's important to learn how to craft items and find the materials needed to craft those items, since learning how to use weapons is kind of pointless if you don't have those weapons in the first place. And I will bookmark the different levels of crafting in the game if you've already watched this video, or if you know how to fully craft one thing in the game but don't know how to craft another thing in the game, right? For those of you who are brand new to the game, you're going to have two items. You're going to have an axe and a pickaxe, right? It really doesn't matter what type of axe or what type of pickaxe you have, since you're going to be able to chop down any tree with any axe and any piece of ore with any pickaxe, right? And if you already have these two tools, I would recommend skipping to the next timestamp. Anyways, in this section of the video, I'm going to assume that you don't have either tools. And in this case, I'm here to help, right? I'll show you where to buy the tools and how to get the few pounds you need to buy them, right? They're not that expensive. And it's right around the corner, as you can see here. And you're going to want to talk to this local Raymond guy. He's the lumberjack. And if you see what he's selling, the axe is kind of the first thing that's on there, right? So, and I'm going to assume that you don't have any money. So in that case, you're going to have to click out and click, do you have any work for me, right? And you can see here that there is this take a contract button. In this case, it's an axe, right? It doesn't matter what item's on there. And in order to complete this mission, you just have to go to the docks that is in front of the village, right? And you should find a box on the dock, right? If you did take the mission, and all you have to do is press E to pick it up and go back to the merchant that you got the mission from, right? And press R to drop the box right in front of the merchant and just talk to the merchant again. And you should be able to complete the task, and it gives you a few pounds. And at this point, I'm assuming that you can buy the axe. And this is the location of the pickaxe from the spawn. And as you can see here, if you talk to the blacksmith and scroll down a bit, you should be able to find a pickaxe in stock for about 5 pounds, which is nearly nothing. So you can do one of those hauling missions and get both the pickaxe and the axe if you don't have either of them. Anyways, for the sake of organizing this video, I'm probably going to divide smithing into 3 levels. So for the first tier, we're going to have garbage tier. These are the weapons that no one wants. However, as a new player, you don't really have much of a choice but to use these weapons. They have terrible accuracy and they don't do much damage. But the crafting levels to make them is quite low, and the materials are quite cheap to get. These are going to be your novice and apprentice crafting levels, and you're only going to need pine and iron for the most part, which you can find on pretty much any island in the game. And as you can see here, there are going to be these brown trees that are pretty much anywhere. You don't even have to look for them. And I would say harvesting them is pretty self-explanatory. You just equip your axe, hold left click on a tree, and left click it again until it breaks up into these segments that you can pick up. And iron can be pretty much found in any cave. I'm going to walk over to the cave on the starter island, since if you're looking for iron, you're probably pretty new to the game. So yeah, I mean, it's just right behind the village that you start out on. I will also show you where it is on the map, and I'll post a few links to some pictures that you can look at to find any notable resources, not just on Booval, but on pretty much every island in the game. But I guess one thing to note is the further you go down a cave, you're going to find rarer materials, right? The most common would be lead, which usually is closer to the surface. Then you get to iron, then copper, then silver usually, and so on and so forth. But on Booval, the starter island, you're only going to find lead, iron, and copper, so there really isn't any point looking for other ores on Booval. Anyways, once you do have your iron ore, all you have to do is go to the smelter and smelt down your iron ore into iron ingots. They weigh less as well. And it is a 2-to-1 conversion. If you have 2 pieces of ore, you can make 1 ingot. If you're in the menu, it automatically collects the crafted item. However, if any of them were made outside of the menu, then you will have to manually take the items. And once you have these ingots, you have to go to an anvil. It depends on what island you're on, but you have to go to an anvil, and there you should be able to craft whatever item you want to craft, right? In this case, it's pine and iron, since that's what usually is required for the lowest level crafting items. And as you can see here, you can rename it whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to name it tutorial since this is a tutorial. And if your skill level is high enough and you have enough resources, you can hold down craft. And you'll have to wait longer depending on what item it is. In this case, it's just a basic Charleston musket, so it should take a relatively long period of time to make. So I'm going to speed things up a bit so you don't have to wait 2 minutes just waiting for this bar to fill up. And I'll be comparing a more late game weapon, this time a Bayern, and a Charleston, and as you can see, the Charleston isn't very accurate, but even if you move beyond making things with pine and iron, it never becomes obsolete. For example, the melees you make with iron and pine are a great economical solution, because you usually don't insure your secondaries and melees, so it might not be a bad idea to make those out of cheap materials, since they're not that bad as secondary weapons, and if you get looted, no big deal. Your main weapon, aka your rifle, should be your most expensive weapon, and you should have that insured when you go to any of the other islands, which we will do for our more advanced crafting items. And now we'll be moving on to the intermediate items that you can craft. But before we start, I would highly recommend at least having adept level crafting in woodcutting, mining, and smithing, right? Expert if you want to be able to make everything that you can at the intermediate level. You're going to be working with Sycamore and steel, so you need to be able to work with those items, which you will need adept just to make the basic materials. There is no steel and Sycamore in the beginner island, so we're going to have to go to another island. But before we begin, I would highly recommend insuring your main weapon, unless it's something that you really don't mind losing, like a Charleston carbine. Anyways, what you have to do is enter the bank, and there should be an option, I want to register a weapon for insurance. And as you can see, I'm going to register my Bayern. However, insuring it may be a little pricey, and I would recommend just insuring it for a day. That's 24 hours, so that should be plenty of time for a single excursion as we're doing now. Just make sure you insure your most valuable weapon, since you can only insure one item at a time. And to be honest, I can't stress this enough. I've had so many people in factions that I have been in where people lost thousands of pounds worth of items just due to a simple mistake, like not insuring your weapons. Anyways, if we're going to get our intermediate crafting items, we're going to have to go to Cantermain from the beginner island Bouval. You may be wondering, how in the world do you exit the starter island? The first method is more convenient, but it's more expensive. You can simply buy a boat from the guy at the docks. And as you can see here, it gives you the option to buy a rowboat. And again, it's not like an item. You hit purchase, but instead of giving an item, it spawns in a boat that you can use. But if you don't want to spend the money, or if you're too poor to buy a boat, you can craft them manually. However, it's somewhat of a process. You're going to need a lot of wood. I would recommend pine, since that's probably the easiest wood that you're going to find. Just collect a good amount of pine, and once you're done with that, all you have to do is hold down V, and it should be giving you the option to craft a workbench. Select a location where the item's white, and hold down left click, and it should place down the item if you have the materials. In order to make a boat, you're going to need 18 planks, not 18 logs, so you just have to craft them like you did with everything else, until you have 18. One log is 4 planks. You will need these reeds that are usually on the coast, so I would recommend collecting as many as possible, since I think you'll need to collect from 9 of these plants in order to make one boat. And once we have the pine planks, you'll notice that you'll need these things called fiber strings. And if you click on the top right button where it says crafting, it should show you the option to create fiber strings with your fiber leaves that you collected earlier. And voila, once you have those materials, you can place down a boat. And once you've placed down the boat, you're going to have to drag it further into the water in order to be able to use it. And the tricky part about this is that you're usually going to have a lot of people around you, so just make sure you take a path that's the shortest to the edge of the map, since you really don't want to have like 5 people sniping at you, since you're going to have to begin the entire process all over again, or pay 20 pounds, which you usually don't want to do. And once you're at the edge of the map, hold down F when F appears, and it should give you an option to go to all the other islands in the game. In this case, we're going to go to Cantermain, since that's where we're going to find our Sycamore and steel. And now that we're in Cantermain, we can get to business. And let's just speed over to the place where we're going to make our items. And as we can see here, we have our standard anvil and furnace, which we will be using to make our steel. And as you can see here, steel isn't just something that you can mine. You're going to have to make it with iron and coal. But where in the world do you get this coal? That's why we're on Cantermain. I'm not super familiar with the map locations on this island, but I know a good place where you can find coal. We're gonna speed up our journey quite a bit, since you really don't want to watch a 20-hour tutorial. But anyway, it seems we found a sycamore tree on the way to the cave that I'm trying to find. and it's kind of this purplish black color as well. And one thing to note again is that you will need adept woodcutting to be able to cut sycamore trees. So just come to the island when you do have adept woodcutting. And this isn't the only sycamore tree on the island. They're quite common. You just have to explore and try to find the best locations. And if you find any really good locations for sycamore trees, make sure to write that in the comments. Since, I would really like to know the most optimal locations that you can mine sycamore. And we're gonna speed the footage a little bit until I find the cave. I don't know where it was exactly, but one thing to note is just be aware of your surroundings. There are going to be people that have bounties on them and they can get you pretty quickly. Anyways, it took me a while to find this cave, but if you go deep enough into the cave, you should be able to find a bit of coal. Anyways, I was able to find coal eventually, but I did have to do a little exploring. It's a little deeper into the cave. You will find iron and lead, and you do have to go underwater to be able to go deeper into the cave, but you will eventually find coal. And now that we've pretty much gathered all the iron and coal that we need for now, let's make some steel. And looks like we can make 5. I mean, it's a decent amount. And I'll speed up the footage a little bit so we don't have to wait for the steel to craft itself. And again, I'm kind of needing of a blunderbuss at the moment. I'll show you how effective it is, but look at all these amazing items you can make. You can make all kinds of melee weapons, throwing knives, and even things like compasses. And I'll demonstrate to you how powerful a blunderbuss is. As you can see here, the crosshairs are quite large. It's very inaccurate, but at close range, it's amazing. In many cases, it is a one-hit KO. The only downside is it's an ammo hog. It uses a lot of ammo, and you're probably only going to be able to shoot maybe 4 or 5 times if you have like a ton of ammo pouches. So you're going to be that guy mining lead a lot, which is kind of annoying to do. And that's pretty much all for intermediate. Just to recap, you will need adept plus smithing, mining, and woodcutting, or else you won't be able to do any of the things that I showed you. And you'll mainly be using sycamore and steel. Now we're going to be moving on to the most advanced crafting recipes. So in this case, you're going to be needing master smithing, master mining, and master woodcutting. So basically, you're going to have to max out those 3 professions, since we're going to be using mahogany and wolfram, which are all master materials. And as you can see, I've winterized my gear again, since you're going to have to go to these 3 islands at the top, these colder islands, so you will need to have cloaks and hats and kilts and whatnot, because you don't want to freeze to death. And at master level, I'm assuming you already have all of this, but if you don't have these clothing items, you really don't have to worry about it. Pretty much any leather store should be stocked with a cloak, a kilt, and a scarf. And now that we're equipped for our expedition, it really doesn't matter which of the colder islands you go to. Pretty much every one of them has wolfram and mahogany. But for this tutorial, I chose Rupert, since you guys are probably most familiar with the island, especially for those of you guys who played this before the paywall was lifted. To be completely honest, it really does help to have a bit of awareness of your surroundings in the game, since when you know what you're looking for, you're going to find it in the most obscure location. Like for example, I spotted this mahogany tree that was out in the open, and I'm gonna skip forward to when I get to the tree. And again, just to note, you will need master woodcutting to cut down mahogany. So if you want mahogany, don't come in with adept woodcutting, since at that point you might as well be hunting white bears with novice hunting. Anyways, now we have the wolfram. I did a bit of exploring and I was able to find some. Since the more advanced materials are hard to find good locations for, they're usually in dangerous areas where you can get attacked. For example, I did find this HBC right around the corner mining gold. Anyways, now that we've collected all of our mats, I went back to Bouval with some of the wolfram and mahogany we collected. Just like we did with all the other ingots, we just go to the smelting furnace and we can make some wolfram ingots. So yeah. And at the point where you have masters, at least right now, you can sell them to new players and they would actually be willing to pay hundreds of pounds for a Milton rifle, for example. But at this point, demand really has dropped sharply, so by the time of you watching the video, I'm assuming that that has changed. Maybe it got worse, maybe it got better, who knows. Anyways, I'm gonna make a Milton really quickly, just to show you that it really isn't a bad weapon. And as you can see here, it's pretty pinpoint. For the average player, it would probably be the second best weapon that you can have in terms of accuracy. But if you want to squeeze out that 1% accuracy, I would go for Bayern. As you can see here, it's slightly more accurate. And I guess that's all for advanced smithing. And as we covered in the other sections, for master crafting, you're going to have master smithing, master woodcutting, and master mining, and you'll be using Mahogany and Wolfram, and that's kind of all you need for craft at the master level. For now, I'm only going to cover smithing, since I would say that's the most important thing that you would have to master in the game. But if you want me to cover combat or trading or anything else you guys may want me to cover, please let me know in the comments. And if you have any more specific questions you want me to answer, you can always join the Discord server. I'll pretty much answer all of them. Like, I'm not super picky with who I talk to. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good day. See you later.